this video, we're going to be solving literal equations. Literal equations are just equations with more than one variable. So we're going to start off with a really basic example of a problem that you've been solving. So we have 3y plus 4 equals 9. And so if we were going to solve that, we would subtract 4 from both sides. And on the right side, 9 minus 4, we can actually simplify that down, right? So that's 5. And we're left with 3y on the left side. And then we divide it by 3. So we end up with y is equal to 5/3. And so when we've solved this, we had one variable, we solved for that variable. This next example, we have 3y plus 4x equals 9, and it's saying that we're going to solve it for y. So we're indicating which variable we're going to solve it, and there's multi-variables in there. Our process of solving is going to be very similar. We're actually going to just identify, well, here's y. So what's in the way of y being by itself? One of those things is 4x, and one is the 3. Let's deal with the 4x first. So we're going to subtract 4x from both sides. On the right side, though, we have 9 minus 4x. These are not like terms. So we have 9 minus 4x. We're just going to write it there. We cannot put them together. And then on the left side, we're going to have 3y. And we're going to divide each side by 3 to finish the problem. And then it's quite all right that we leave it like this. We take this right-hand side, we just rewrite it, we simplify the left-hand side with just y, and we rewrite it so we solve it. So our answers here will have other variables in them most of the time. So it's not uncommon for that to happen. We did solve it for y, check, we got it by itself. So we're just rearranging things, and these problems actually are equivalent relationships between these variables. So if I look at my original one, and I look at this one, if I substituted an x value into one of them, I would get a certain y value. And if I substituted a certain x value in here and solved it for y, we would get the same y value that goes with it. So we've just rearranged it, and it's really similar in terms of this solving. So the next example is going to be I equals Prt. Now this is where invisible math comes into play because Pr and T, if there's nothing in between there, there's multiplication. We just have to know that. And then we're solving it for T. So here's T. So things in the way of it being by itself are the P and the R. We have to do something with those. It's being multiplied here, so we're going to divide. And we're going to divide by PR. And we're going to do it to both sides. Normally we would simplify at this point, but in terms of simplifying, there's nothing that can be simplified, so we just keep that left side I over PR. And that's equal to T. Moving on to our next example, we're going to solve this one for W. Here's W, things in the way. We have this 2, and then we have this 2L. So we're going to deal with the 2L first. We're going to subtract 2L from both sides. So on the left side, we have P minus 2L. And on the right side, that became 0, and we're left with 2W. And then we're going to divide both sides by 2. At this point on the left side, there's nothing that we can simplify, but we just have to write that whole bit, and that's going to be equal to W. So that's how we're going to solve these. We're going to identify the variable, we're going to figure out what operations we're going to have to do, and then we're going to simplify it down where we can. The last two examples here, we have A equals 1/2 B times H. Notice nothing in between those is multiplication for B. So here's B. A few things that we can do here. We can do this one step at a time. So like I can divide by H first. That works. So now I have A over H is equal to 1/2 B. And then I can either divide by 1/2 or I can multiply by 2. I'm going to choose to multiply each side by 2. So I end up with my solution being 2a on top over h is equal to b. Notice that b is a cursive b. It just helps us make it look not like a 6. Our last example here, we have p plus 9 all over 5 equals r. We're solving it for p. Here's p. P is kind of blocked in the top here, so p plus 9, we can't do anything with that until we address this 5. So we need to multiply it by 5. I like putting 5 over 1 as a fraction here because it's multiplying by a fraction. And we're multiplying the other side by 5 as well. So we have 5r on the right side. On the left side, these 5s both become 1s, so they're essentially non-players because we're multiplying it by 1. And so we have p plus 9 last step is going to be subtract 9 from both sides, and we end up with P is equal to 5R minus 9. If there's things to remember, here they are. The first one is identify the variable that's being solved for. The second one, identify what is in the way of it being by itself. And the last one is complete the operations, doing it to both sides, simplifying it down, and knowing that our answers probably will have multiple variables in it. And again, we're talking the same relationship between the two variables or three variables within the same relationship, equivalent expressions, just rearranged different order based on these operations. Thanks for joining me. Hope you learned something. Hope you take this and go practice. Go and be free.